Chapter 27 Ethical Autism and Self-Absorption. The diagnosis of autism is relatively new to our culture. It is of interest that, as the 20th century has passed, dictionaries have given increasing space to the definition of this phenomenon. Thus, the Webster's International Dictionary 2nd edition, 1909, gives less space to the definition than does the smaller Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 1993, which reads, quote, Autism, noun, 1912. 1. Absorption in self-centered subjective mental activity as daydreams, fantasies, delusions, and hallucinations, usually accompanied by marked withdrawal from reality. 2. A mental disorder originating in infancy that is characterized by self-absorption, inability to interact socially, repetitive behavior, and language dysfunction. End quote. We are most familiar with autism in children, the clinical autism of the second definition above, because it is often reported in periodicals and, when not overcome, continues indefinitely. Some families continue trying to reverse the total withdrawal of individuals aged 30 and more from speech and interaction with other persons. Aging mothers sacrificially persist in the painful task of caring for these clinically autistic persons. In previous eras, persons were at times seemingly autistic because some great shock or disaster shattered them to the point of incoherence, sometimes briefly, sometimes for years. This has occurred when the person has witnessed, when tied up, the brutal and horrifying torture of friends or sons, or the rape murder of his wife and daughters. This acute trauma-induced condition is not the same as clinical autism. The cause of clinical autism is not known. Its diagnosis is made entirely by observing behavior. In the moral sphere, we must also diagnose in terms of observed behavior because, as our Lord said, by their fruit ye shall know them, Matthew 7:20. In the moral realm, we can clearly observe a withdrawal from reality and a self-absorption in sin that we can define as an ethical autism, an inward focus often consistent with anthropocentric impulse towards deification of the self. Ethical autism is radical and even total subjectivism, and ours is the culmination of the thoroughgoing subjectivism of Romanticism. Art and life have been reduced to self-expression, and to convey an objective meaning has been derided by many artists, whether in painting, sculpture, literature, music, or in other spheres. To seek meaning in such works is held to be naive. You must create your own, because meaning is subjective and personal. Lawrence Durrell, who favoured all this, said, quote, The artist became an autist. He becomes a selfist. End quote. An examination of modern arts shows how clearly withdrawn from reality it is and the extent to which this self-absorption is exalted. Meaning is held to be purely personal, determined entirely from within, so that to strive for an objective meaning and frame of reference is held to be reactionary. Because it's the artist's article of faith that God and morality are mythical, it follows that self-deifying art is alone tenable. This, logically, is a development of original sin of Genesis 3:5, where the tempter holds that every man should be his own God, knowing or determining for himself what constitutes good and evil, right and wrong, law and morality, or standards in any and every area of life and thought. Ethical autism is a logical outcome of original sin, of making man the measure of all things. An early prophet of ethical autism was Oscar Wilde, a bisexual and one who delighted in mocking established learnings, conventions, and manners. The arts have followed his lead in promoting ethical autism in modern culture. It's of interest that not all cultures have until now seen such a growth of ethical autism in their midst. Some cultures, whether non-Christian or superficially Christian, have been so outgoing in their ways that such a withdrawal has been too alien to thrive. Self-absorption coincides with victimhood. In the Christian perspective, man's problem is sin. In humanism, as a developed form of original sin, man's problem is victimhood. Such a victim supposedly has a moral claim that stands in judgment over reality. Picasso's self-absorbed art became socially relevant only with Guernica, and the emphasis there was victimhood. In Guernica, 1937, according to Elson, quote, Picasso became deeply engrossed in the non-political aspects of the project, notably the theme of the human deranged by pain, end quote. Despite Picasso's leftist politics, his painting, quote, eliminated all political reference, end quote, and concentrated on human pain. Picasso's political passion was superseded by his sense of victimhood. According to Elson, quote, Grünewald's Eisenheim crucifixion was a source, end quote. Now, Grünewald attempted to depict the horrors of crucifixion in order to stress what the atonement cost Jesus Christ. But Guernica is not about atonement, simply about victimhood. Someone once referred to Guernica as a milestone in the history of art. If so, it is a sorry milestone indeed, because for Picasso, the only meaning is victimhood. Elson, who thought highly of Picasso, still saw Guernica as sadistic. Its horrors are overdone deliberately. Victimhood insists that there is no sorrow like unto its sorrow, and if you fail to get the point, it is overstressed to make sure that you will. A relationship does exist between ethical autism and sadism. What can we say about a self-absorbed 25-year-old man who subjects his loving mother to endless and humiliating work? His intelligence is of a high order, but he has withdrawn into himself. He is his own God and universe. This is the meaning and all-consuming goal of ethical autism. Culturally, this self-absorption is deeply embedded in 20th century culture. One has only to read the Romantic poets to understand why we have this problem in our time. They have aggressively promoted ethical autism as the only legitimate framework to work within. It is especially tragic that pietism has turned the churches into centres for the cultivation of ethical autism. Nothing enrages many of these churchmen more than a challenge to their total self-absorption. They assume that Jesus came to enable them to be blessed in their withdrawal from objective reality and forfeiture of stewardship and responsibility. In The Rebel, Camus saw the purpose of Romanticism as the defiance of God and morality. The Romantics, from Byron and Shelley to our contemporary artists, have as their excuse the hatred of Christ. We know what drives these humanists to cling to their positions. What is the excuse for these ethically autistic church people? We see all around us the rise of what is called mindless crime and of, quote, rebels without a cause, end quote. These terms only apply if we seek and adopt an objective reference. This is denied by a self-absorbed, ethically autistic culture that withdraws into a world of its own imagination to avoid dealing with the world that truly exists, the one that God created and holds man responsible for.